Everyone rates books differently. You're allowed to rate them however you want. However, I believe I have a superior rating system, so I'm going to be going over it today. And I'm very kindly going to show you examples of each rating. Well, 1 through 5. I do use quarter stars, and I could get into those and show you examples of each, but we're not gonna. So I am what some people might consider a rather harsh critic when it comes to rating books. I am getting a little bit better at being able to just read books for fun, but it's really hard. It's really hard to override the part of me that just breaks down books and go, sentence structure isn't great, plot kind of lazy, characters really surface level, etc. But I do try to be fair with my ratings at the end of the day. Like I'd mentioned, I do have some examples for you all, so let's go through each one. We're going to start from 1 star and then work our way up to 5. Please ignore all of the tabs on here. I started reading the Shatter Me series when I first got into reading, and for some reason I really enjoyed tabbing the most random of shit. I've looked through the things I've tabbed. I don't know why I tabbed them. But anyways, starting with a 1-star book, we have Imagine Me. I believe this is the last novel in the series. There is a novella that follows it up, but the reason I end up giving this 1 star is because I finished it. And I wish I hadn't. I believe this is the only book I have given a solid 1 star to, because if a book is on its way to being 1 star or even 2 star, I usually DNF it. If for some reason I end up finishing a book that I think is going to be rated that low, it's because ego. Something in me is saying, you can't let this book beat you, you need to finish it, you need to rate it, and then just rip it apart. And some might say that that's a toxic way of approaching, but I don't care. I don't do it often, but I did do it with this one because, like I said, it was the last book in the series. I felt like if I didn't finish this one, somehow all of the time I spent on this series was wasted, which isn't true. Now, present day, I can sit here and say that Shatter Me as a whole, like the series, it's not great, but it served its purpose, and its purpose is really just being an accessible and fun and easy read for readers. And for me, when I first got into reading, that's what I really needed. I need something that was addictive, that had fun characters, and was easy to follow, and this series did that. But this book was just terrible. It took me forever to get through this book. I'm talking months, and for context, I finished all of the other books in the series within a day. My routine at the time was go to the bookstore, pick up the next book, sit at home, read the entire thing, and then rinse and repeat the next day. At the time, I didn't know that it was legal for you to buy more than 1 book at a time, and I honestly wish I still had that mindset because I go a little crazy now at bookstores. But yeah, I was inhaling these books, and this one just, it did me dirty. There were some parts that I liked, but overall, I just felt like this was not a book that needed to be done. As I had mentioned, I don't usually give a book a 1 or 2 star rating, so the books that I do have for the examples are the only books I believe I've given those ratings to. But the reason that this book ended up getting 2 stars is because, honestly, I was feeling really angry and petty at the time. I'm gonna be honest. Alone with You in the Ether. Alone with You in the Ether was a book that was essentially stalking me on the internet ever since I started reading. Everyone kept talking about it, they were raving, everyone loved this, and I wanted a piece of that action. However, when I spoke to people about this book, or the videos that I saw of people speaking about this book, they all made me believe that this was a romance story. And there is a difference between a romance story and a love story, just like there's a difference between fantasy with romance and romantasy. A romance story means you are signing up for a really fun, comfy, cozy time. There might be a little bit of angst, there might be some miscommunication, but at the end of the day, it's a happy-go-lucky time. A love story in my brain just means it's a story about a relationship. It doesn't mean that it's a good one or a happy time. It's just a story about love. And this is specifically a love story. And because it was so mismarketed to me, I ended up having a terrible time with this. But I wanted to finish it because if people asked me why I didn't like this, I wanted to be able to talk about the book as a whole. Like, I saw it all the way through. Now for me, when it comes to a 1 and 2 star, there is usually just a slight thing that will differentiate between me giving a book 1 star or 2 star. My enjoyment overall as a star rating for both of these was 1 star. But the reason this got the extra star was because though I was upset and angry and I didn't connect with any of the characters and I was just frustrated and annoyed the entire time, I could admit that this was well written and I understood why people like it. And an example of 3 stars is The Cruel Prince. I had tried reading this a long time ago, like years ago, before I was really even into reading. I think in 2020 during lockdown. And I DNF'd it because I was just bored. Again, this was mismarketed to me. A lot of people told me it was a romantasy, but in reality, the romance of this book and the series as a whole is a subplot, and the main driving force of it is the political intrigue, in my opinion. So at the time, I just wasn't interested, but a lot of people told me to give it another chance, and so I did for their entertainment. And I had a decent time. I mean, one might say I had a fun time with it, but I didn't enjoy it. This is not something that I would sit here and recommend to people necessarily. With that being said, I gave it 3 stars though because I think it served its purpose. It did exactly what the author wanted it to do. It's not terribly written. It's a decently fun time, and I could understand the appeal of it. I didn't want to DNF it, and I did fly through this actually pretty quickly, so it was an easy read. It wasn't super insufferable. Honestly, I had a worse time with this book, and this book was a part of a series that I did deeply love at the time. So for stars 1 through 3, that usually means it's not something that I'm personally enjoying. Now I do use quarter stars because I use Storygraph like a very intellectual human being. I love using quarter stars, I use and abuse that, I love the power it gives me, and so there are books in between where perhaps it's a book that I didn't entirely love, but it served its purpose, but I liked it more than I liked this. So I'll give it maybe 3.25 or 3.5. For a book to get a 5-star or even a 4-star from me, it had to have done something really special, and so I believe my average rating is like a 3.6 something. It's usually in between a 3 and a 4. An example of a 4-star book is The Fifth Season. This might be controversial because it seems like people either absolutely hated this and DNF'd it, or they absolutely loved it and give it a raving 5 stars. I gave it 4 because I could sit here and admit that this is very well written, like very, very well written and very well constructed and thought out and unique, and I could appreciate it for what it was, but I didn't connect with it, and I think the issue is because I was fucking confused the entire time. Thankfully, I was buddy reading this with someone, but we were both confused. I mean, there were very rare instances where one of us knew what was going on when the other didn't, but just having someone else that I was reading it with where we could sit there and be like, do we think this is what's going on? Was quite nice. I think if I was reading this by myself, I would have 1, taken a lot longer to read it, and 2, had an even worse time because, again, I was so confused. This was giving off university level reading, and I am someone who just went to college for a year and then I left. Okay, I'm not there. This book called me stupid in every possible language and every possible insult it threw at me, okay? It put me in the corner with a dunce cap and it shamed me over and over again. Every time I thought I was catching on, it threw me for a curveball and went, psych, you're still confused, bitch. I'm actually going to give one more example of a 4-star book. Angels Before Man, I gave 4 stars, and I did love this, and I did understand what was happening during it. I ended up giving this 4 stars because there was a point in the story, I think maybe around the 70% mark, where things just kind of fell off. The tone changed, the writing changed. It kind of felt like the author got a little lazy and maybe a little too unhinged and lost the main plot that we had been following for 70%. And so I think these two are very good examples of me giving a 4-star. My overall enjoyment of this wasn't super high. I didn't connect super emotionally to any of the characters or the outcome. I was disappointed kind of near the end, but it was beautifully written. The storyline was just wonderfully crafted. And then this one was one where I had an extremely enjoyable time with it. I do still recommend it to people, even though I didn't like the ending of it and I felt like it kind of fell off. Essentially, for a book to get 5 stars for me, it has to have blown me away in one way or another. It has to have something really special about it. So either it needs to be a perfect book all around where I have no complaints for afterwards, or if I do have complaints, there had to be this extra special element to it that makes me overlook it. And so I have 2 perfect examples of this. The Empress of Salt and Fortune and Tress of the Emerald Sea are both books that I gave 5 stars to, but one of these, the story itself, got 4 stars for me, and it got the extra 5th star because of my time with it. And that is this one. This was my first ever Brandon Sanderson book, and I think this is actually a great place to start. Yes, there are Easter eggs from the Cosmere in here, so if you haven't read any of it, you're gonna miss those things, but as someone who read this, never reading anything within the Cosmere, I didn't know what I didn't know. Now, like I said, for rating wise, the story overall and the writing got 4 stars from me. I was bamboozled by the plot twist, but that's because I was just so distracted and blinded by how much fun I was having with it. But I can sit here and say that the plot twist wasn't great, and now having read the entire Mistborn trilogy, I would say that the Sanderlanche in this is also kind of weak, but this was such a cozy and fun and entertaining time, and anytime I wasn't reading it, I was thinking about it and wanting to pick it up, and that's what got this that 5th star. And then The Empress of Salt and Fortune is overall just 5 stars. There was nothing where I had to sit here and be like, where can I give you an extra star? It deserved every star I gave it. This book is barely over 100 pages, and yet it delivered a better story than some books that are over 600 pages. This book, in my opinion, is a masterclass in storytelling and also in fantasy. When I got this, I sat down and I binge read it in like 4 hours, which doesn't seem like a very short time to most people, but I've had some novellas that are shorter than this that took me days to get through just because it wasn't really pulling me through the story and I wasn't super invested in it. But from the minute I started this, from the first page, it demanded my attention and I gave it to it willingly. I was like, yes, I am sat, I am ready to be immersed into this world. And it was just so beautiful and it was brutal, and I could not stop thinking about it after I finished it. And that is all for me on my star ratings. I really do find it fascinating how other people rate their books, so if you want to share your rating system with me in the comments, I will sit here and read all of it and I will discuss with you and I will ask for examples. So please do it, actually, because I'd really love to hear how all of you rate books and what qualifies what star rating for what. But for now, I'm gonna go because I've been sitting here talking for a very long time. I don't know how much I was able to cut this down, but I've been talking for about 40 minutes now. I can't shut the fuck up. But if you like this video, go ahead and do the YouTube thing, comment, like, subscribe, and share with your friends, and I will see you in my next video.